guys do. I have a book on tape or a laptop, teaching myself the language of the web. Job and life keep me pretty busy, but a few years ago did spend some time and learned HTML, a little bit of CSS, used MySQL and PHP. PHP talks between MySQL, which is a database engine, and folder, and HTML. And I've got a website, really rough one up, and it runs. I got paid $11 a month or something like that to have it run. I rented a virtual server at rackspace.com, and that also exposed me to the experience of needing to learn how to install the operating system and everything, because it was just a blank server. So I figured out, with a lot of help from guidance and things I read, how to install the version of Linux on the machine, and how to transfer all the web code and all that stuff from my local development laptop to Rackspace's virtual server. But I've pretty much neglected it for, maybe 3 years now. At one time I sort of had a dream of trying to, using a website and electronic connecting, to try to fight some of this divisiveness that is occurring in our political parties and in the electorate at large. Something that really disturbs me deeply. And I'm not trying to say, oh, you've got to be a conservative, or, oh gosh, you've got to be a liberal. It's just, we're too much divided, not listening to each other, trying to understand the other person's point of view before talking over them. An awful lot of our media, including web-based media, is stoking that differences and that divide. And regardless of where you are in the political spectrum, I think it helps us if we can always have some values of using and demonstrating mutual respect, even when we disagree and disagree strongly. It just is so easy to attack and criticize and not connect. Favorite little blurbs I often post on web blogs or Facebook pages that are descending into arguing and fighting and catcalling and name calling and everything is, I remember this very clearly when I was a young kid, pretty young, not sure what age, but my folks taught me that either my folks or in school, I'm not sure where, taught me to be aware and on the lookout for people or groups that criticize, attack, put down other people or groups. Typically, what they're really trying to do is elevate themselves by cutting down others. I was taught to understand almost all of those occasions as revealing more about the character of those doing the attacking than about the character of those being attacked. And the revelation was not good, was not positive, was not healthy, was not contributing. Politics has gotten so competitive and argumentative and winner take all, winner at all costs, the ends justify the means, good old Machiavellian behavior is A-okay, and it seems the media is compliant with that. When they are, they exaggerate it, they exasperate it, emphasize it, make it bigger. Well, so today, I'm not trying to find a windmill to tilt at, playing Don Quixote on his valiant steed. After Thanksgiving and before Thanksgiving, I saw the annual warnings about getting together with family and friends over the holidays and getting into fights about political positions, differences of opinion. It's a fairly new phenomenon, I think, with social media and global connectedness that the web has brought a lot of us. I've been there, I've done that. I'm not scot-free, totally innocent of that. But I think I've come to a better place. And if I do it at all anymore, it's very, very rare. At least that's my perception. And my goal. When I see something said that I disagree with, I usually try to just simply ask questions to hopefully get people who read it or who wrote it to think about additional perspectives or aspects of whatever they're talking about. And I probably take it way too seriously. I should just let that stuff roll off my shoulders. But it disturbs me because I think it's such a reflection of who we're becoming, who we have become, many of us, and who we are becoming. And again, much of the media, and that bothers me. Ratings in the media business drive for revenue, and some news outlets, I am positive, are doing this because they believe it drives ratings, and thus they make more money. If that's true, they're deliberately and by design stoking the flames of divisiveness and helping divide our country for money. Which I believe is what is also happening in politics. A couple, 3 years ago, so the information is just a little bit dated, but I read a book that offered up some statistics that went something along the lines like this. The candidate for federal office that spends the most in the campaign wins over 90% of the time. So if you stop and think think about that, that really creates a need for a dependency on raising money, and not little money, but big money. Unless they have no competition at all because of gerrymandered districts from either party or other reasons. So, you know, it's fairly well documented that most members of Congress spend an awful lot of time, they and their staffs, doing fundraising for the next election. So once you've won, once you're in that group that spent over 90% or spent the most, you know, and assuming you want to run again, you darn well know that you don't want to alienate the folks who have provided your money, the sources of your money. And I think it's safe to assume that that's even more important for the folks who have provided lots of your money or big sums of money. So one can think about that from a congressperson, and I've got to address an issue or a proposal that's come up. Doesn't it make sense that I or my staff, my political advisors, are going to anticipate or consider what position I might take and what its impact on my big money donors might be? So much in America, politics at the electorate level is divided. You know, there are a lot of issues, and a lot of these issues are very important to people. Issues like gay marriage or abortion or health care for all. I mean, those are some really important issues to an awful lot of people. And there are people on both sides of each of those issues, to which those issues are very, very important. But I ask myself, are those the issues that are the most important for our country? When you consider things going on a global basis or big, large geopolitical issues. I mean, everybody has to answer that for themselves, obviously. But I really strongly wonder if those wedge issues, if you want to call them that, are being used by people to keep us divided so that we don't focus on things like the impact of big money in campaigns and in governing after the election. If we're kept divided and focused on, quote, other, unquote, issues, how many of us will really, A, come to the conclusion that correcting the corruption of big money and its impact on systems of electing and governing is the biggest issue? A, that's sort of hard to understand, and B, it's going to be really hard to get any kind of large enough group to come together in the face of all the divisive issues in politics, so that we could come together and do something together and force change that's really important. If you buy this line of reasoning, it kind of can reveal why so many people feel that our federal government is ineffective and refuses to address some really, really important issues. If they're driven or heavily influenced by big money, dependency on that big money, and thus its sources of big money, they're going to pay possibly an inordinate amount of attention to the desirable positions or stances of that big money group, rather than what's good for the whole. I think it just also fits together in my head. It's so obvious. Maybe I've just gotten into a rut and can't see out of that forest because of the trees. But I mean, it just makes sense to me. And this isn't a partisan issue. This isn't a political positioning issue. Whether you're on the far right, very conservative, or on the far left, very liberal, this is a threat to our very representative democracy, in my opinion. It's a pretty bleak picture. Anyway, long story where I originally dabbled with figuring out how the web worked and databases on the web worked and all that kind of stuff. And I had dreams, pipe dreams really, of trying to do some things. I got some URLs that I own that could be used to try to reach out. But then how do you reach out? How do you overcome all the negative and reinforcing messaging that hit so many people, so much of their time during a day or a week? I don't know. Easier to ask the questions than to answer them, that is for sure. Well, let me see what I got coming up here. I'm just out right, and I better start paying attention.